Thank you for checking out Real Talk About the Town, an online candidates forum. This episode will feature candidates running for two offices, District 4 for the Alameda County Board of Supervisors and District 5 for the Alameda County Board of Supervisors. None of the responses have been edited, and the order in which you see them will be randomly selected. All of the candidates have agreed to participate in the forum, except for Gerald Pichunk, who's running for District 5, and Omar Farmer has suspended his campaign in the District 5 race prior to the start of our production. Thank you for joining the forum. We hope it helps you to cast a more informed vote.
According to a November story in the San Jose Mercury News, 68 people have died in Santa Rita jail since 2014. Why, in your opinion, are so many people dying while in the sheriff's custody? As a supervisor, what will you do specifically to reverse this trend? How will you get the other members of the Board of Supervisors to support your proposal?
Far too many lives have been lost in the Santa Rita jail. Our jail is currently under a consent decree by the Federal Department of Justice, and we have had to pay out millions of dollars in settlements to families. It's a cost to taxpayers in dollars, and it's a tragedy for the lives that have been lost and the families that have been harmed. The state has mandated that every county implement AB 1185, independent sheriff oversight, and we are years into the process and still have not implemented sheriff oversight. It's time for independent oversight. When I'm sworn in, I will ensure that we begin to audit the jail and jail medical staff so that we can have a true understanding of how many people have died in custody and within 45 days of their release. We know that the data is skewed. Sometimes people say 68 deaths since 2014. Sometimes people say 73 deaths. Sometimes people say they can't really tell because inmates are considered released and then sent immediately to the emergency room. Either way, something is amiss. Last year, our Board of Supervisors reissued a contract, no bid and no conversation. On the consent calendar, jail medical through WellPath was issued a renewal for $300 million while people have been sick and dying and while we have suffered the loss of too many lives. When I win this election, it will be a clear message to the rest of the members of the Board of Supervisors that we have to take things differently, that we need a new approach, and that we need to work together. In addition to that, I am an organizer. I will employ inside and outside organizing strategies with members of the community and also within the members of the Board of Supervisors. From the day of the election on March 5th until the day I'm sworn in January, I'll have 9 months to meet with people, to lay out a plan, and to organize for change.
Every death is a tragedy, including the 68 that occurred at Santa Rita Jail, largely due to suicides and overdoses. But these tragedies were a long time coming. We're all old enough to remember when California deinstitutionalized state mental health hospitals in the 60s, and when President Reagan emptied our psychiatric hospitals into so-called community clinics in the 80s. Those actions forced many who need care onto the streets, and sadly, many ended up at Santa Rita Jail, where the population grew to 3,500. Santa Rita Jail isn't set up to provide care for the mentally ill. To remedy this, the Board of Supervisors approved $81 million as an expansion to deal with and set up state-of-the-art mental health facilities and care at Santa Rita Jail, to hire clinicians, clinical staff, and others to prevent isolation and neglect and provide quality care. The county is now reevaluating whether or not we need to build such a large facility. The new sheriff, Sheriff Sanchez, has informed us that there are possibly other options we could pursue, and we're looking into that, particularly because we all support Care First, Jails Last. The project that was underway has a lot of protest against it, but I have been steadfast in my support for community mental health facilities. If we have the funding of community mental health facilities, we would prevent folks who need mental health services from ending up in Santa Rita Jail. It's my sincere hope that the Board of Supervisors fully funds community mental health. We've partially funded it, but I know we have the resources to fund the program totally. Our board has new members on it, and I'm very hopeful that the new members will see the importance of providing full funding for community mental health. This funding would need to be ongoing, but I know we can have the resources to provide such funding. So once again, I'm confident that the Board of Supervisors will take the appropriate steps to not build a large state-of-the-art mental health facility at the jail, but use existing space or potentially look at other options based on recommendations from our SHRE. Thank you.
Alameda County has a budget of over $4 billion, plus healthy reserve accounts, yet serious challenges remain in numerous areas, including the unhoused. Please give your assessment of how county leaders have established and addressed their priorities. If elected, what would you do differently?
The county's role is to provide services to the homeless, while the cities have the responsibility for encampment management. With the support of the cities and their endorsement, the county has adopted a $2.5 billion Home Together plan. This plan will provide for the reduction in the unsheltered. We have seen remarkable results over the last 2 years with our Home Together plan, but we still find more people becoming unsheltered than housed. That's one reason why we have Measure A1, the Affordable Housing Bond measure, that provided a lot of units for affordable housing. But still, even with Measure A1, which I was instrumental in championing, we still need to have another regional housing bond. I serve on the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority, where we're looking to provide $1 billion regional housing bond in Alameda County. There will be other funding, approximately another $9 million throughout the region. But with this regional housing bond, we'll be able to provide housing production, housing preservation for affordable housing, as well as protection from displacement. This is extremely important because we need to get people housed. People are not going to get better on the streets. In addition to the regional housing bond, we're working to address the RHNA numbers. That's the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. In unincorporated Alameda County, we have to build roughly another 5,000 housing units. And I'm working to ensure that we're able to achieve that goal. In terms of continuing our efforts at addressing homelessness, in my district alone, through Project Home Key and Room Key, we have 2 hotels, the Comfort Inn and the Days Inn, both of which are in my district, that are providing housing for hundreds of homeless individuals. I also led the effort to have the tiny home village built at the First Presbyterian Church that's providing housing for the unsheltered. Additionally, at the Fairmont campus in my district, I led the effort for the county to open its first navigation center that provides beds for homeless individuals as well as respite services. So these are some of the things that we're attempting to do to address the needs of the unsheltered.
The $4 billion county budget that we have to work with is more than enough to address the current issues, especially the issue of folks being unhoused. Right now, 25% of our budget is spent on the criminal legal system, and I think that that is an excessive amount. We absolutely have to start spending money to divert people away from custody. We have to start ensuring that people can get healthy and well in the community. and not simply continue to put money in the criminal justice system. And the reason that I tie the criminal legal system to the issue of being unhoused is because we see far too many people being arrested for crimes of poverty. The Supreme Court is looking at a case right now that originated across the bay about whether or not unhoused people can be jailed and arrested simply for sleeping outside. The CARE Court legislation that came from the state legislature and SB 43 also have given new mandates to providing mental health care and are giving judges the ability to put people in locked custody. Without enough investment for community-based resources, people will not have access to preventative health care, to maintenance of mental health care, and they will only be able to seek care in locked custody or in our jail, which currently is the largest provider of mental health services in the county. One of the initiatives that I hope to implement pretty early in my term is a universal basic income kind of pilot program that will help to supplement people's incomes so that they can remain housed and so that they can become housed. UCSF put out a study last summer that said the difference between being unhoused and housed was $300 to $500 a month. That is not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. But for someone who is on the edge, it means whether or not they're going to be on the street tomorrow. Alameda County, with a $4 billion budget, scores of reserves, and ARPA funds that have been unallocated and unspent through 2026, has enough resources to implement a universal basic income pilot and to begin investing in community-based care in a meaningful way.
The county is the level of government responsible for providing services to the indigent. How will you address the needs of your constituents living at or below poverty line that run contrary to the interests of the middle class and wealthier individuals in your district who are more likely to vote?
You know, I don't think that we have to pit community members against each other. Just because people have less income than others doesn't mean that we need to be fighting for resources. A $4 billion budget means that we have plenty. We have enough. But if we continue to operate using a scarcity mindset, then we will imagine that communities have to fight for resources. Voters are renters. Voters are homeowners. Voters are working people. Voters are parents. Voters are young people. Voters are students. When we serve our community at large, we serve everyone. And as your elected supervisor, it will be my job and my duty to ensure that we have child care for working families and that we have elder care for people whose parents are beginning to age, but right now they feel stuck in between. We live in the richest area, in the richest state, in the richest country in the world, and we have a $4 billion annual budget. There are enough resources to go around, but we've had the same elected leadership in this district for 24 years, and that's why people have to ask this question about whether or not we have enough resources to take care of people who have less. We need leadership that has a mind and a heart and a vision for all of us to thrive. Alameda County can absolutely thrive, but we need to reallocate some of the resources. And that is exactly what I'll do when I'm elected. I'll ensure that we are investing wisely for everyone.
I'm a champion for addressing the needs of the indigent, those who live below the poverty line and are in need in my district and throughout the county. Contrary to popular interest, there are many things that I've done and many things that the county is doing to address these needs. First of all, let me state that both our Healthcare Services Agency and our Social Services Agency, both of which are billion-dollar agencies, so that's $2 billion, most of which those resources go into providing services for vulnerable populations to ensure the delivery of safety net services. The county's budget is $4 billion, So half of our budget is clearly associated with the needs of the indigent. But furthermore, I'm working on supporting a public bank for the East Bay. I've appointed 2 folks from the board from our county, elected officials, our treasurer and our auditor, to serve on that working group. I've also supported, through the Alameda County Transportation Commission, free bus student passes. Additionally, I've worked along with my former colleague, the late Supervisor Valle, to support sheriff's oversight. This would be both an Office of Inspector General and an oversight board. We're moving that agenda forward through the Public Protection Committee, of which I serve on. I have a long history of supporting the county's efforts to provide services to our undocumented population as well. Recently, as chair of the Social Services Committee, we had a report on the services that we are providing to refugees, many of whom have come from Afghanistan of late, but we're beginning to see some in from the Ukraine as well as those south of the border. We have opened up an Office of Homeless Care and Coordination. This is a $100 million office with staff that are focused on ensuring that we have wraparound services to those who are unsheltered. Finally, I've led the effort to push for reparations in our county. Reparations is an important ingredient to ensure social justice and equity for African American descendants of slavery, many of whom are still suffering the impacts of slavery.
District 4 has a large amount of unincorporated area where the county serves as the municipal government and therefore makes the land use decisions. Traditionally, if activity happens in a specific district, remaining board members follow the lead of the supervisor elected to serve that area. What will be your plan for balanced housing development in the district since the county is in dire need of affordable housing?
As I said in my first response, I'm working to ensure that the county reaches its RHNA numbers, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation numbers, to ensure housing in the unincorporated area. This would be housing for extremely low income, and moderate income families and individuals. This is very important that we provide this housing. I've worked and championed the Measure A, the housing bond measure in Alameda County that provided funding for housing in the unincorporated area and countywide. Measure A provided roughly $580 million, but for every dollar it leveraged another $3 to $4, and some of that money went to the unincorporated area for housing. In addition, I'm going to serve on the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority, Regional Housing Finance Authority, where we're looking to put a housing bond on the ballot. This would be a regional housing bond that would raise about $10 billion for the entire region, but about $1 billion for Alameda County, so that we could produce housing, preserve affordable housing, as well as prevent displacement, protect tenants and folks from displacement. This is extremely important as well, because we need to have more housing. In addition, through the unincorporated area, I've championed with the late Supervisor Wilma Chan and presently Supervisor Tam about $30 million of ARPA and CARES Act funding for the unincorporated area for safety net services like food, diapers, language access, equity type programs and other things. Finally, in the unincorporated area, I'm working hard to ensure a fair balance between rental housing providers and tenants, both of whom are equally important, because we need rental housing providers to provide housing and we need to keep tenants housed, because housing should be considered a right, more or less. So to ensure that right, we need to have adequate housing. So through the efforts around striking a balance, we're looking at mediation, mandatory mediation with counseling for tenants. We're looking at a rental registry so we know the status of rental property in that incorporated area. We're looking for inspections, and we've already started that part of the program to inspect rental housing units, as well as I support Just Cause that aligns with 1482, but I'd like to have it go a little further so that it protects seniors and the disabled and has right of return, as well as caps the amount of money that can be charged upon people returning. Thank you.
Being that I live in Ashland, a part of the unincorporated community and one of the poorest communities throughout all of Alameda County, it feels like we finally have the opportunity to have true representation in this area. We also absolutely need development of affordable housing stock, and we need to protect and preserve the current affordable housing that exists. There are certain senior homes and affordable housing communities that are nearing the end of their protected status. We need to make sure that those timelines get extended to protect the communities that live there. We need to institute tenant protections so that people who currently are paying rent can afford to remain housed, and we need to consider where we're going to build new housing. As a resident of the unincorporated community, I am well aware that we are short on other things in our community that will need to be taken into consideration as we think about development. We need protected bike lanes, we need sidewalks, we need pedestrian safety, and we need to ensure that we are also considering preserving and protecting and development with green space in mind. Just because we live in a densely populated area doesn't mean that we should skip out on having trees and green space where our communities can feel free to play and be outside.